everyone, it's Nina and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about reading, but specifically how to read more. I personally don't think I read as much as other booktube content creators, but in the last 3 years since I got back into reading, my number of books read per month has shot up a lot, and I do think I've started to crack the code. So today I thought I would give you guys some tips on how I started reading more. First off, I wanted to give a little tangent about why I think reading is probably one of the best hobbies to have. And that is because books are so accessible through libraries being one of the last free things in our society. Libraries really are a precious resource that we should hold onto and use as much as possible. So if you have a local library that you use a lot, I definitely recommend giving them a donation, either monetarily or if you have some recently released books, they can probably also take those as donations as well. Libraries obviously also provide a lot of other resources besides books, but books is obviously what my channel is about, so that's what I'm focusing on for this video. Anyway, with that tangent aside, let's get into the actual video. My first set of tips, I wanted to talk about finding books, because I think half the battle to reading more is having books that you're actually excited about reading. Tip number one is to find books that genuinely interest you, and not books that people say you have to read as a necessity or just read because they are popular. This seems like a no-brainer, but you'll be surprised how much reading a book that you don't have any interest in can tank your whole mood and put you into a reading slump. And I feel a big factor is with BookTube, where there can be a lot of almost peer pressure or FOMO of reading a popular book. And you kind of get it into your brain that, well, if it's a popular book, it must also be good. But no book is going to be perfect for everyone. And if it's something that doesn't actually intrigue you, or the writing is getting in the way of your enjoyment of it, you're allowed to stop reading it. I think as you read more, you will see things in common between books that you like and things in common between books you don't like, and that can help inform you to find books that will become favorites in the future. Which leads me to my second tip, which is to find your genres or niche. These kind of books will become your tried and true that you can always come back to if you ended up reading something that felt like it was going to send you into a reading slump. When you read these, you can feel energized and excited about reading again. This, again, will take time as you read from different genres, but I feel like finding your one small niche that has everything you want in a book is definitely worth it in the end. I think another tangential thing is to prioritize rereads when you feel like you're going into a slump. It definitely becomes a more relaxed or mindless activity if you already know the world or the topic of the book that you're reading, and that can help it feel more comforting. I think this is also a really good option if you want to turn reading into a filler activity over mindlessly scrolling, since some books obviously will demand more of your attention than just scrolling does. But a reread of a favorite book, at least in my opinion, has the same energy as putting on your favorite movie or TV show in the background. I also feel rereads in general are really underrated in online book spaces that are just so focused on always reading the brand new thing. And rereading my favorite books helps me kind of deeply ingrain what I loved about the book from the first time I read it. Tip number 3 is reading books that are below your grade level. And this is so you can pick a book that is written in a way that's easier to understand. If you're reading Shakespeare or another classic that has a less common way of speaking in it, it's going to be harder to get through. So my way of getting around this is to read books that are below your grade level. I used to be on the threshold between new adult and adult. So when I read young adult books, I could usually fly through them a lot quicker because they're written in a way for people that are younger than me to understand. And that doesn't mean they're not emotionally deep or important works. It's just that the lens they are told through is inherently more accessible since their audience is younger. Tip number 4 is reading different things / reading more than one book at once. I feel even after you found your niche, reading the same thing over and over again can become a little bit boring, or you'll end up constantly comparing books that are in the same genre to one another, which can kind of take the fun out of it and make it seem more like a competition between the books instead of allowing you to get fully immersed in the book you're currently reading. So I feel every once in a while, reading something that's outside of your comfort zone in genre or format is a great way to kind of reset yourself. Kind of related to that is getting into the habit of reading more than one thing at a time. I personally try not to have more than 2 or 3 books going at once, because I feel if I have a lot of books, it kind of results in me having decision fatigue, where it's hard for me to choose which one I want to pick up, and then I end up reading nothing. But I think having books in a variety of genres that they're reading at the same time really helps so that every time you want to pick up a book, you have an option for the mood you're in. Now we've gone through different ways that you can kind of pick out a book, let's talk about getting into the mood of reading and creating time to read more. Tip number 5 is to try out audiobooks. We previously talked about more of the internal side of your book choices impacting how much you read. Now let's talk about the medium with which you read books. But when it comes down to what actually like boosted my reading from what it was before to what it is now, that was through the introduction of audiobooks. And that basically came from the fact that I was turning a lot of time that I didn't have for physically reading into time when I could be audiobook listening. Because I still have a commute, I would spend a lot of time like waiting for the bus and listening to music. But now that I have audiobooks, I can get so much more done and feel really accomplished by either starting or ending my workday by reading a book. Tip number 6 is to have a set schedule for reading. This kind of plays into what I just said about having my routine of listening to audiobooks when I'm on my commute. But even if you aren't listening to audiobooks, I think just setting a specific time of day for when you want to be reading is a great way to build up a habit and read more. Obviously, reading is a hobby, and hobbies of all types take time. So if you aren't able to set aside an amount of time for that hobby, that's totally fine, but you should know that that's probably also one of the reasons why you aren't reading as much. I personally think if I had reading as my only hobby, I would be reading like 100+ books a year. But I also have other hobbies that take up a lot of my time. I feel like I just said the word hobby like 1,000 times. In addition to my commute, I also like to read physically before bed. But I think another option is for you to start getting in the habit of reading when you normally would just be like on your phone scrolling and wasting time. I know I said before that books can take more mental power than just aimlessly scrolling. But I also think a lot of that like hesitation to pick up a book is more of the like initial activation energy it takes for you to get used to doing a task. So as you do it more and more, you will develop an impulse not to scroll on your phone, but instead pick up something to read. Tip number 7 is to not compare yourself to others. Don't try and read at the pace that others share on social media. If you watch booktubers who are like, I read 30 books this last month, and you're like, well shit, I only read 2, that is also fine. Personally, no shade to anyone that reads that a ton like that, but you also have to take into consideration that if they are a booktuber or someone who makes book content online, that it's their job as well. Like, no duh, they're going to have more time to be able to read, since reading more is what they do to be able to make money. But I also like low-key think that quality over quantity is underrated, especially in terms of like reading comprehension and being able to remember everything you read. I truly don't know how someone who reads like 30+ books a month can remember everything that happened in every single book and or feel like that book emotionally or intellectually impacted them. Personally, I'm at the position now where I feel like I would rather have 20 books that I read in the year that I really, really loved over 100 books where most of them felt mediocre. Tip number 8 is to grow to be okay with DNFing. This is something I have a problem with still doing as well. But I feel like what I've come to learn is there's only so much time in the day to do an activity, especially when it comes to finding ones that bring you joy. And if you aren't having fun while reading or feeling like the book is like providing you anything to add to your life, then stop reading it. Tip number 9 is to engage with the text more. And this is about more so boosting your reading comprehension as well as your speed. I think it's really good to like take notes at the end of chapters of what happened because it will help you understand like the big themes or the plot points that the story is trying to convey to you. Another part of thinking and reflecting can be that at the end of the book, you can create a list of key events, character lists, what you liked about the book, and what you think you would change. For nonfiction, I recommend going through like the author's works cited or further reading sections. You can also look up people's reviews in scholarly essays or look at book reviews on blogs. I also recommend just like interacting with the community or just like talking to your friends about the book that you read. I think starting a book club with your friends and your family is a great way to like hold all of you accountable to reading more. And I think all of these things will help you engage with the book more and make you a better reader. And I think another like tip 9.5 would be about upping the immersion as you're reading. You can listen to music, both like curated playlist or like kind of like general like genre-based playlists. You can also look at fan art or like memes that people have made about the characters. And just overall get more invested in a book by interacting with the book's fandom. So those are all of my tips and tricks for reading more. I'm sure a lot of people at New Year's will set themselves a New Year's resolution to read more books in the year. But you can honestly start this as a goal at any point in time. I feel like in fall of 2020, I like thought to myself, I want to read more. And I was like, well, maybe I'll set that as my New Year's resolution for 2021. And I'm honestly so glad I didn't like wait 3 months for the arbitrary changing of the calendar year to get started working on my goal. So I guess whenever you are watching this, take it as a sign for you to start reading. Anyway, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys, as always, so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, consider liking, commenting, or subscribing if you aren't already. It means the world to me whenever I see a comment from one of you guys or find out I have a new subscriber. So thank you so much for all of the support on my channel so far. If you'd like to see my reading updates in real time, you can follow me on the Storygraph, which is linked in my description. But that is going to be it for me today. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!